What's up, guys? Alex here, back from Pokemon TCG HQ. It's been a couple of weeks or a few weeks that I haven't actually been able to make videos personally. I've just been swamped at work, so working 10 to 12-hour days for the whole week, so I haven't really had time to actually make any videos. But hopefully it does change going forward from now. Sort of the busy period has kind of quieted down. The weekends, I haven't even had time on weekends to actually do anything. I've sort of just been away. Went to see a couple of friends in Nottingham. Last weekend went to a couple of league challenges in the Midlands as well, with a couple of the Pokemon TCG HQ guys, Tamao and Luke, Joe from Omnipoke, Joe from Omnipoke. Um, which I didn't actually place too badly at, considering I hadn't played for a while and I sort of went into a bit of a slump of not really playing or testing or trying much. But I thought I took a couple of decks that I just enjoy playing. I actually took Greninja to the first league challenge and came second, losing in my final round to Volcanion, which is not an easy matchup. If anyone tells you differently, don't listen. And the second day I actually played Gyarados, which is everyone's not so secret deck. Something I actually played once upon a time last year in a regionals. So I've played it before. Yeah, so it's actually just a really fun deck, and I actually played against 3 Volcanions on the Sunday, and I essentially what did I do? I scooped in the last round because there was no point. I couldn't get points unless I came first. To a friend, so he can get first. Otherwise, I would have came second, I believe, maybe third. Who knows? Doesn't really matter. In my absence, Tamao has actually made 2 really cool videos. Something that's a little bit different, as he had mentioned in his videos, to most Pokemon YouTubers, showing off deck lists where they just sort of put the deck list up, play a couple of games with it. Tamao's actually gone through sort of a deck building process, so it's actually deck building, sort of not interaction, but he's doing it there in front of you, so giving you insights and ideas of how and why and what cards he's putting in, and it's a really cool idea. So I'm doing these videos to try and follow up on those, so he's given a lot of insight into actually the deck building. I'm going to try and follow it up and give you a little bit more insight on things outside of deck building, so just matchups, what you'd expect to see going if you do decide to take a similar deck into a tournament. But yeah, I think it's a really cool idea. I really hope to actually do a couple of those videos myself. Maybe we'll swap it around so Mal can then do sort of the matchups, or Luke or Charlie, once they're all set up with internet, to actually do a couple of follow-up videos as well, which is be really cool. Sort of just follow on, give you a bit more insight, more ideas into what we think and how we do things. Yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. So this first video that I'm doing is following on from Tamao's Mega Gardevoir EX deck, looking into its matchups against probably the most popular decks, or what we consider the most popular decks. A couple of fringe decks we don't cover, but you know, if we will and can, if you would like us to, just let us know if you do enjoy these videos. Yeah, I hope you enjoy, guys. Thanks. Alright, guys, so I'm back with the deck list that Tamao actually built in his deck building video, and he was able to show you a couple of games of the actual list itself. The deck, as mentioned, it revolves around Mega Gardevoir EX. Sorry, I'm actually using just an image currently, so I can't actually zoom into the cards, but Mega Gardevoir does 110 damage with Despair Ray, 1 Fairy, 1 Colorless, 110 damage plus 10 for each bench Pokemon you discard from your bench. Sorry. So it plays multiple Hoopers, multiple Shaman, just so that you can refill up your bench very quickly. It also plays Unknowns if you need to either just fill up the bench or start digging. And there's a Tech Absol that Tamao really enjoyed using as well in the actual deck. There's a couple of other tech cards which you can consider, particularly Pokemon. Something like a Hawlucha, which is really cool. It's like a one-sided escape rope, which is quite handy at times. But generally the list is quite a good skeleton, quite a good beginner's list. Actually, I believe Tamao played something quite similar in a tournament before. So it is quite tried and tested, but it will give you a good base on actually potentially taking this deck list or deck to actual tournaments. So what I'm actually going to do in this video is actually look at some of its matchups, some of the matchups you are expecting to see in some of the tournaments you may consider taking this deck to, and in general I actually believe it's got quite a good all-rounded performance. But I'll show you just 6 popular decks that you're likely to face out there. So yeah, I'll get going. So the first matchup I do want to speak about is actually Darkrai Giratina Garbodor. So this deck is probably one of the most popular decks right now. We saw a large amount of players play it in the US regionals. We have seen it quite a few times, a bit in the UK. I mean, we've only had league challenges as well. It was also, I believe, fairly popular. Giratina was fairly popular at the most recent event in Essen, the Spiel event, which was won by Yvetal Mew, if anyone didn't know. But just going into the matchup, just generally with decks with Garbodor, you will struggle a little bit, mainly because it shuts off your ability to actually reset up your bench to do the actual, if needed, one hit KO damage. But it's actually not as bad as a lot of people think. With Garbodor, it's generally just on the bench and you can Lysander it and knock it out with Despair Ray very easily, because you're already doing 110 damage, and it also has the added bonus of being weak to Psychic. Whether that matters is not too much, but it makes it absolutely fine. Going into the actual basis against the matchup of Darkrai EX and Giratina EX, against Darkrai EX, so it does Dark Pulse 20 plus 20 for each Dark Energy attached to all of your Pokemon. With Mega Gardevoir, you have resistance to darkness, which therefore means you can sort of nullify that 20 damage, so it's only counting the damage, the energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon. So therefore, it does tend to struggle to one-hit KO your Mega Gardevoirs if it does go for those sort of massive plays, as it plays 4 Max Elixirs, and of course double Dragon Energy for Giratina, by allowing you to actually 2-hit KO a Darkrai, you're actually in quite a favourable position. If your opponent starts using Giratina EX, now it has a very interesting ability, Renegade Pulse, which prevents all effects of attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Mega Evolution Pokemon. So as Mega Gardevoir is a Mega Pokemon, it would actually do no damage to Giratina. However, it's a little bit counterproductive with Garbodor in the deck. I guess Garbodor is mainly to shut off a lot of other heavy ability based decks. But with Giratina, they have a choice of either trying to protect Giratina using Renegade Pulse, or trying to prevent you from actually attacking and doing damage by getting Garbodor out so you don't set up. If it does shut itself off, one of the major things with Giratina EX is that it's actually weak to Fairy Pokemon. So Dragon types are actually now weak to Fairy types since they've been introduced. Previously, maybe a year and a half ago, they were all weak to themselves. They were weak to Dragon types. So by being able to hit for weakness, plus you play a Hex Maniac, so as long as you're able to, as long as you do not prize your Hex Maniac, if they go down the route without a Garbodor, you should be absolutely fine. So with this matchup in particular, I probably would say it's actually quite favourable. So if you go into this matchup, play it as you normally would, with getting your multiple Mega Gardevoirs out, most likely 2 on the field at the same time, setting up your bench, use abilities where necessary before Garbodor hits the field, and yeah, just be able to knock out the Giratinas. Darkrai EX is a little bit harder. You're likely to have the 2-hit, as I mentioned, with Despair Ray. Even if you don't discard any bench Pokemon, you're doing 110 times 2. If you do 2 turns, it's 220, which is perfect for 180 plus Fighting Fury Belt Darkrai EXs. Going to the second matchup, I just realised the VS versus is actually a different colour. Doesn't matter. We're going to have a little look at the next biggest deck, which you'll probably see a lot of people play. Very much the hype deck. since the rotation. Mega Mewtwo EX, Mega Mewtwo YEX, I should say, partnered with Gardevoir. So with Mega Mewtwo EX, it's doing Psychic Infinity, 10 damage, plus 30 for each energy attached to your both active Pokemon. Now, one of the biggest issues with this deck going up against Mega Gardevoir is it is actually weak to Psychic. So with Mega Gardevoir, it is dual type, it is Psychic and Fairy. Fairy first, I should say. But by being that type, it's actually able to one-hit KO Mega Mewtwo EXs without much of a return or a reply, just by using Despair Ray. Purely because for Mega Mewtwo EX to do 210 damage, or 220 because it has the 10 plus, it requires a total of 7 energy attached to both active Pokemon. Now that would mean generally probably two double colorless, and a Psychic energy attached to Mega Mewtwo just to one-hit KO your Mega Gardevoir, which can then just be easily returned, and it's very unlikely that your opponent will be able to actually continue doing a lot of damage. If you struggle to get your Mega Gardevoirs out, I don't think it's still too much of an issue, as long as you eventually do, unless you prize all of your Mega Gardevoirs. If you prize 2, 1 is fine. You play Super Rods, you play multiple balls of being able to get them out, and just being able to hit 110 times 2 because of weakness is very easy. Gardevoir again makes an appearance because Mega Mewtwo's isn't really affected much by abilities outside of its first turn, when it tends to use a Hooper and Shaman. So Gardevoir is actually quite a very good partner for it. However, it just struggles against a deck that can do so much damage so quickly, and hitting it for weakness. So again, I would actually call this favourable. In fact, this would actually be very favourable for the Mega Gardevoir player. There's not much else to say that. So into matchup 3, what do I have? I have Volcanion and Volcanion EX. Now, this matchup is actually one of the more difficult ones, with Volcanion using Power Heater, which is only doing 20 damage initially, but by the speed and actually ways of Volcanion EX can actually discard Fire Energies very quickly, very early, and being able to use Power Heater because of the ability of Volcanion EX as well, Steam Up, which is simply discard a Fire Energy card from your hand. If you do, your basic Fire Pokemon does 30 damage or more. By using Steam Up in combination with Ultra Balls and Shaman, setting up, or some lists maybe even use Octillery, they are able to set up sort of multiple Volcanion EXs very quickly. Maybe sort of 2 or 3 turns, they tend to have 2 Volcanion EXs, maybe with 2 energy each, and it becomes a point where you're going to really struggle to actually knock them out. One of the good things about Mega Gardevoir is, again, you play Hex Maniac. You do need to time your Hex Maniacs well. You need to time your ends well. You need to just essentially slow down the Volcanion deck, stop it from actually one-hit KOing you, because with Volcanic Heat, which is Fire, and Colorless, does 130. If your opponent has 3 Volcanion EXs out and was able to either Fisherman or Energy Retrieval, Fire Energy back into their hand, they can very easily knock you out in one hit, because 3 Steam Ups does 90 plus damage, plus the 130, which is 220, and it is knocking you out. Because of the speed of the deck as well, it's not always advised to try and outpace it. It is the case that you will just have to manage your deck very well. And like I said, well-placed ends, well-placed Hex Maniacs, and just being able to try and prevent it from actually powering up Volcanion EXs on the bench, because they're very likely to get 2 Volcanions out, 1 active with 1 energy, powering up 2 or 3 Volcanion EXs, and another one on the bench just in case one gets knocked out, because with Mega Gardevoir it's actually quite easy. It's only 2 discarded Pokemon from the bench. You just need to be a bit careful. The only other trouble is Volcanion can actually knock out Mega Gardevoir EX as well with Steam Artillery, with just 3 Fire Energy cost, 100 damage. If they can, and on many occasions they will, especially if you're playing Skyfield and they will play Skyfield, they can get 4 Volcanion EXs out, 4 Steam Ups, Baby Volcanion is doing 220 damage. Now that's the worst case scenario for you, because they're taking 2 prizes to your 1, because you're going to have to knock that out, because that's going to happen multiple times. With Volcanic Heat, it's a little bit more manageable because this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. They will definitely play a Ranger, they play Olympia, they play multiple switches because of the heavy retreat cost of that Pokemon. So it's not hard, but it gives you a chance if they use Volcanic Heat. As such, I will be calling this matchup unfavorable. Feel free to disagree, but this is how I see it and how I've seen it played, how I played it out in my head. Yeah, so that's Volcanion. Matchup number 4. So we're gonna go up against the deck which I personally used at Worlds. Yveltal Breakthrough Mew, IE Banter Box. So why is it so good? Of course, Yveltal Fright Knight. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, each Pokemon tool card in play has no effect. Now, it's really big issue against sort of Mega decks, because it turns off all the Spirit Links, meaning if you try to or attempt to evolve your Pokemon into a Mega Pokemon, you will end your turn. There are ways around it. So you play Hexmaniac again, you can use that to actually turn off the Fright Knight ability. You can also Lysander a different Pokemon into the active to be able to do that. If you play stuff like Hawlucha, Escape Rope, as long as they don't have another Fright Knight Pokemon on the bench, you can again get through the actual ability. Or an Escape Rope, similar situation. By doing that, you will have a chance, but with Yveltal, its attack's actually really good as well. It's got Pitch Black Spear for 1 dark and 2 colorless. Does 60 damage to the active, 60 to the bench. Of course, with the Gardevoirs, you do have resistance once again. So it's only doing 40, or likely to be doing 40 to your Gardevoirs. So it's likely to tank a lot more hits. Which is why I consider this matchup a little bit more even than most people. It can be very difficult again if they do start Lysandering maybe your Hoopers, and maybe your other Gardevoirs with just with 2 with your 2 retreat costs, just your Gardevoirs I mean, and you're not able to evolve. If they can start spreading a lot of damage, it can become very unmanageable. With Mega Gardevoir EX's Despair Ray, of course, you can sort of counter that as you were, by being able to discard a Pokemon that has any damage counters on them itself. Another annoying thing is that they tend to play Yveltal EX with Fighting Fury belts. That is generally just quite an annoying Pokemon to actually deal with. You're having to generally 2-hit KO them. And additionally, some, I don't think many anymore, but some have toyed with the idea of playing an Umbreon EX as well. Just by being able to prize race and take 4 prizes with the Umbreon EX using its attack can cause a bit of an issue. Mew is actually in the deck to be able to use Pitch Black Spear now, or you sort of copy its own attacks, like Evil Ball against other Psychic weak Pokemon such as Mega Mewtwo, but tends to be only played in sort of like a 2 count off, so now it's mainly just used as a pivot. Very handy, of course, when you do or are able to knock out the Yveltals, and then they can put up the Mew, max Elixir back onto another Yveltal, onto another Darkrai if they play one of them, and then keep going and keep chaining attackers. But as I said, the 130 HP is manageable. This Bear Ray does remove all the damaged Pokemon. You can Lysander out of the way, Hawlucha, Escape Rope. So generally, it is an okay matchup. I will consider it even for this video. Actually, go back. It is an even matchup. Again, it's just about playing it smart, in my opinion. Just being able to prevent those sort of 4 prize KOs, or being able to spread out damage, will really help you up in a matchup. We will move on to probably its hardest matchup, if I remember correctly now. Yes, it is. Another half hyped deck. Since rotation, Mega Scizor EX, a good friend and fellow Pokemon TCG HQ, who hopefully will be starting making videos soon. Luke Kirkham played a lot of Mega Scizor last season, and has actually attempted it a couple of times this season in a row just to sort of test. The main reason, and there's not really much you can actually do about this, it has Iron Crusher for 2 Metal Energy, does 120. You may discard a special energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon or Stadium in play. That's not the issue. The main issue is that it is a Metal type, which hits Mega Gardevoir for weakness, unfortunately. So in the same way that you hit Mega Mewtwo for weakness, Mega Scizor hits you for weakness and is able to very easily knock out all of your Gardevoirs. Coincide that with Garbodor again. Again, similar to Mega Mewtwo, Mega Scizor doesn't actually require many abilities outside of turn 1, maybe turn 2. So it's Hoopers and Shamans. Garbodor is just a good card to sort of balance it out with and sort of work itself out against a lot of the other matchups that rely on abilities. You may not see it much in sort of tournament play. You probably will see a few, mainly because of the hype and popularity of Volcanion EX decks now, which being an EX that you can grab in a tin, which is quite cheap, and generally it's not the most expensive deck at the moment anyway. You'll see the sort of play of Mega Scizor go down quite a lot. So if you do run into this matchup with Mega Gardevoir, just be a bit, you were just very unlucky, and essentially we would consider it an auto loss. So going up against this matchup, the only thing you probably can do is pray, I guess. So we'll just put very unfavorable, and we'll move on. I guess there's not really much else we can actually do about that. The final matchup I will talk about is Greninja. So I put Talonflame there as well. Talonflame mainly was put in for Worlds, especially when there was sort of the item lock period, so there was Trevenant and Seismitoads. But with Talonflame, it allows you to essentially attack and do a computer search for any 2 cards, so it's just increasing that consistency. I believe quite a few lists nowadays, or sort of post rotation, might not even need Talonflame. I personally had played this in a League Challenge last week that I had mentioned, and played Talonflame, but found it a little bit cumbersome. Felt like it wasn't really needed as much as I thought it'd be. But generally, the main focus of the deck is actually using, firstly, Frogadier to use water duplicates, and then evolving it into the stage 2 Greninja, and eventually break evolving it into Greninja Break. So on Greninja's attacks, you've got both one colorless energy cost, and the other one's just a 1 water. First one, Shadow Stitching for only 40 damage, but until the end of your opponent's next turn, each Pokemon on your opponent has in play in his or her hand and in his or her discard pile has no abilities. So essentially, with an attack, you are using a Hex Maniac and dealing damage. Now, add on top of this, you've got, when you break the Greninja, increases HP to 170. It's got the ability Giant Water Shuriken. So once during your turn, if this Pokemon's in your active position, you may discard a Water Energy from your hand and deal 60 damage, or put 6 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Now, so with Greninja, it is a setup deck, so it tends to be a lot slower than most decks you would face. It's not really going to get going until maybe turn 3, turn 4 in most matchups, so it tends to go down in prizes by 2 or 3 by then, and it's very likely that Mega Gardevoir will be able to do this. Shadow Stitching is annoying again because you won't be able to use your abilities, and Giant Water Shuriken just means it's going to be aiming to targeting those either Shamans or Hoopers that it's then going to Lysandre bring up, and trap him with Shadow Stitching if necessary, or if it can. So the matchup is actually quite a difficult one. When you're actually taking damage to the bench using its ability, if they're able to set up 2 or even 3 Greninja Break, I feel like it's going to be very difficult for you to actually win the matchup. 110 damage just isn't enough. You need to discard 6 to knock out a Greninja Break, which is doable, but very unlikely that you're going to be able to do that back to back. Against Greninja 130s, again, similar to Yveltal, you can actually manage that, so it's actually okay. But as I said, you're going to be going ahead in prizes, likely 3, maybe even 4 before they start actually trying to bring it back with a well placed N, and then giant wall shurikens all over the place, and shadow stitching so that you can't actually get out of those ends. So it's all about managing your deck, not burning through all your resources. You will need those supporters to be able to get out of sticky situations. You will need to be playing the Hex smartly as well, so that they can't use Giant Water Shuriken, so that they can't take cheap KOs on Shaman EXs. But if you're able to race them, and you certainly will outrace them unless you just draw really badly, it's a winnable matchup, but I wouldn't say it's in your favor. If they can end you at the right times, and then Shadow Stitching, Moonlight Slash for extra damage. Sorry, it does for 1 water, it does 60 plus 20 if you return a water energy attached to the Greninja. Just with multiple giant water shurikens, you are going to struggle. They're going to do a lot of damage to you very quickly. So it's the case of, like I said, managing your resources and also just trying to outpace them with smart hex moves. So I'm going to put that as slightly unfavorable. But yeah, I mean, from what I've seen with Mega Gardevoir decks, if we go back to the deck list, back to the deck list, is that a lot of the matchups are 50-50. They are very even. They all only slightly favored in one side outside of the 2 large favorable matchups or unfavorable matchups, which are Mega Mewtwo and Sizzle, which is a near auto loss, or as close as an auto loss as you can get. Outside of that, I believe you will have a chance against most decks. There's a couple of other fringe decks you might need to sort of consider that you might face. Rainbow Road, very quick, very powerful deck. Does tend to run out of steam if you can knock out his Xerneas's, and then again well placed ends. Maybe favored slightly in theirs because they're doing a lot of damage and doing it very quickly, whereas you're just having to knock out the Xerneas's, and if they have EXP share, it's just become really annoying. Another matchup, I guess Gyarados, again, it's everyone's so-called secret deck, everyone's secret deck. It does 210, I'd say fairly easily, with 3 Magikarps with 20 damage on each of them on the bench with your Gyarados active. But again, it also needs to be able to stream those attackers. Now it can sort of just lose to being end. Some builds play Shaman, some builds play Octillery for mid to late game. Unfortunately, with Hex, you can't Hex and End at the same time, which is a bit of a pain. So again, a little bit more of a difficult matchup, but it can be done. So yeah, that's my quick, well, I like to say quick, I have no idea how long this video was. This video is probably about 20 minutes, 25 minutes on top of my little intro. I hope I gave you some insight into some of the matchups or something to think about. Some of the cards, or card changes I probably would make to this deck. Maybe you can even add in, like I said, Horluch is a tech card. It's quite handy. I believe Tamao played Acrobikes because he just wanted a quicker, speedier version of the actual deck itself. A good one to actually have a little look at is Mises, and I think Brit Pybus also played it as well. The Mega Gardevoir list they played in the most recent tournaments at the Spiel tournament and in the US regionals just gone. I believe the list was, I say fairly similar. I think they played 3 Hooper EXs. They didn't play any Acrobike. They played 2 Mega Turbos. I believe it was just a straight line of Gardevoirs, Mega Gardevoirs, Hoopers, and Shamans. I believe there was a Fairy Drop. I saw a list with a Repeat Ball, which, because you're playing so many of the same Pokemon, makes sense. Yeah, so hopefully you can use this as a nice, I don't know, skeleton basis that you can start off and then Tekken cards that you want to. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video. As I said, it is something I want to try and do to give you more insights into the same deck, so we'll Tamao if he's continued doing deck building videos, or I might try and do one edit, but we'll try and follow it up with matchups, and sort of give you a bit more ideas, give you a bit more information, and hopefully you find it interesting. If you can let us know, please comment. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to speak to you guys. And hopefully I'll do another video soon. Actually, I have to do another video soon because Tamao actually released a second deck building video fairly recently, which means I'm behind. But cheers, thank you, and hope you enjoyed.